Thank you for joining us for this session. I mean, this was a perfect lineup. We just heard about racing. We heard about solar cars. Joan, you have a long history in racing, and you started out with racing solar cars and then switched to electric vehicles. How did this all lead up to creating a company that is like an engineering pioneer for electric vehicle technology?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I started with a solar car 20 years ago, that's true, and I make a race in Australia. I'm trying to cross all the desert in Australia. And then suddenly, like 12 years ago, I decided to open a company that was really focused on electric vehicles. But we start from racing, that's true. We start doing the Formula E Championship, where we won the first season. Then we are in Extreme E also. You have seen a girl driver that was here today, Christine. She was a good friend racing with us also. And also we are in rallycross. We have done the first electric rallycross championship on the world. We are doing also electric rallycross in US now. We are opening different championships in all the world, electric championships in Chile, Sweden, many different countries. But the target was to use that experience, to use that knowledge for something else, you know. And then we decided that the company have to be focused on electric mobility. And we are doing now electric vans and electric buses using the technology that we acquired during more than 10 years in motorsport.
Okay, so yeah, that was actually the question. The key learnings that you have from racing, and you take part in different kind of races, which is great because you get more data on, you know, when you have different race types, like the Extreme E, like the Formula E. It's all different circumstantial variations that you have, you know, from what we spoke from the grounds that Christine is racing on ice, on gravel, the Formula E is on tarmac. So you get a lot of different experiences from the racing. And how do these learnings help you develop the technology for vehicles that, you know, are driven on the road, whether it's, you know, private, personal cars, or if it's public transportation like buses?
Yeah, to be honest, I really think that, for example, the Formula One was a successful environment to make new improvements on the automotive sector. No? So we have seen in the past how active suspension or the ABS system on braking and many other things have appeared first in Formula One and was really applied later to the automotive sector. I think that the same is happening now in electric automotive. No? So in Formula E, we have learned a lot how the BMS have to work, how to improve really all the cooling system for batteries, for motors, how to improve the efficiency on transmissions. We have learned a lot in software side, how to recover the energy on regeneration and put this energy on the battery that later you can use. Obviously, I mean, as you can imagine, in motorsport, just to win just 1% efficiency means 6 seconds at the end of the race. So it means to win or to be maybe on the back of the grid. No? So we have learned a lot, and it's a perfect place to experiment. It's a perfect place where we acquire the knowledge, where we are learning in many different areas. I think that mainly in software side, the software to manage the battery, the BMS, regeneration, and the powertrain. This is the key. And obviously now we have to use this knowledge for something. And finally, I think that we convince the world through motorsport also that the future will be electric. So why not now to use this knowledge to be applied on the road cars? No?
Yeah, I mean, one of the major projects, and I believe you were involved in this, were electric buses for South Asia.
Yes, so while I was part of QEV team, we started a project in Philippines. And actually in Philippines, there is 300,000 of jeepneys driving around as a main way of transportation for a majority of the people. So when you think about electrification in those emerging markets, you have to think about differently than what we are doing in Europe or what we are doing in America. And we started with the first converting those vehicles to be electric. At the end, we realized that there are many other flows that you have in the vehicle that is that old, like mechanical flows with suspension and, you know, vehicle breaking down. So you have like this nice, high-end, high-tech electric powertrain, but the vehicle is braking constantly. So at the end, the project developed even further. So QEV developed the full electric minibus that is being driven in Philippines, and there is now like 100 buses driving around. Joan can tell more.
Okay, but the intention was to use the existing cars and transform them, and that's why you entered the South Asian market and not Europe or the US.
At the beginning, the intention was exactly like that. So to use the vehicles that are already existing and to do the conversions. And if you think about, first of all, like market of Europe, the public transportation, especially when we are talking about the buses, it's not the main way of transportation for majority of the people. Okay, you use the public transportation, but not as much as you use it in Philippines. So for us, the entering into the Philippines market, it was like completely untouched environment where majority of the companies are not putting too much focus. You know, it's an emerging market. You have to create something that is going to be really, from cost side, it needs to be cheap. You need to develop a cheap vehicle. And I think that was one of the main challenges for QEV, because if you think about racing, you know, the expenses can go really high, so you're not limited in that side. But when you think about public transportation and the vehicle that many people have to use, and in environment where people don't have the money, don't have the resources, the goal was to keep the price down, and that was really one of the challenges, I guess, when you use these high-end technologies from racing to apply to those kind of projects.
Right. I mean, can you give us an example from a technical point of view? Because if I look at a race car and if I look at a bus for public transportation, there's quite a big difference, but how is the connection? What was the learnings that you took from racing and put it into the bus development?
The technology finally is the same, no? It's an electric vehicle, electric motor, inverter, battery, BMS. So really all the software that you are learning in one side, you can really apply to the other, looking the maximum on the efficiency side. Yeah, also about the weight. No, weight is important on racing, but now an electric vehicle is much more important than on the past. We really have to try to reduce the weight of the platforms, the weight of our vehicles, to achieve the maximum range as possible. No? Now is a competition of range on electric vehicles to see who can really develop a vehicle that can do more kilometers per day. And obviously this is a must. No? This is a target that we have to find. So yes, use all the experience that we get in motorsport. It was really useful.
Okay, so you're in racing, you're developing technology for the powertrain, you're doing public transportation, but you also revived an old luxury car brand and made it fully electric, Hispano Suiza. What was the motivation behind that?
Well, to be honest, I think is the logical step. No? From motorsport, the first that we have done is to enter in the supercar sector. No? Using the technology that we have, obviously, was really easy for us to develop cars of 1,000 horsepower, 2,000 horsepower, something crazy on the market. And we have really worked for many different brands from our company. And one of them was Hispano Suiza. I mean, it was the family that was the owner of the brand. It was the fourth generation of the man who created the brand of Hispano Suiza in Spain, who decided to reborn the brand. And obviously, it was when we started to speak about that, the idea was to make a combination between the history, the legend, the elegance of that brand that was on top of the market 100 years ago, from 1904 to 1945. But at the same time, it was a brand who have really all the performance, who have at the high level. They have the best motors. They were competing with Rolls-Royce, including they were racing and winning many races in Europe. No? So to make that combination, obviously, was necessary to do electric, because electric is the future. Electric is the performance, is technology. So we convinced really fast the family to do the Hispano Suiza car, the new Hispano Suiza brand, a combination between the future technology and the legend and historic brand that we know.
And I would say it's logical, because if you think about Hispano Suiza before, Hispano Suiza was actually the one supplying even part of the technology to Rolls-Royce in the previous days. So Hispano Suiza was considered as the one, developing a groundbreaking technology. So if you're reviving that kind of brand, what is the logical way to do? To use, again, groundbreaking technologies.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you just mentioned you, before you joined NAD Capital, you were working at QEV Tech, but in your life so far, you have raised more than 100 million in investment funds, if I'm informed
Altogether,
correctly?
if I'm looking at the companies where I worked and the fund where I'm working right now, yes, that would be a correct number.
Yeah, and your focus is purely on the electric vehicle technology or field, whatever. So what are the key learnings from the early investments? I know you invested in Formula E, you invested in QEV Tech, Rimac,
Yes,
I think.
Rimac is one of the portfolio
What are the
companies.
key learnings that you made from the investment perspective?
Okay, so I can look at from two perspectives because I was, before joining NAD, I was on the entrepreneur side. And of course, now I'm looking at it more from an investor's perspective. And the most important part that I learned is that the key thing, beside having a great technology, a great vision, what you want to do. So of course, it has to be something, you know, that fits into the market, that is going to go forward. But beside that, the crucial thing to make a company successful is to have a great team. And without the great founders and great leaders, it's impossible to have great companies. So always, even now when choosing, we as NAD Capital invest in early stage, specifically related to electric mobility, so nothing outside of the electric mobility. And when we are looking at new companies, beside, you know, presenting the new groundbreaking technology, for us the most important part is to have a great team that we believe can lead the company to success.
Yeah. So I just mentioned you are looking at the EV market in a whole. So you're looking at four different sectors that you want to invest in.
So when it comes to electric vehicles market, we actually like to say that we are closing the circle of electric mobility, from charging points, anything related to the electric vehicle technology, even production of electric vehicles, electric buses, and even to the far end of recycling the batteries. And what do you do with the batteries after they run out of life in the vehicles on the road?
So would your approach, I mean, that would be something that I could envision, your approach also be that the companies that you invest in, that they work together? I mean, QEV Technologies is predestined to work with other companies that you invest in?
I think it's QEV is a great example because QEV cooperates really with 3, 4 other companies that we have in portfolio. And we always like to say that also when we are taking in account of getting a new company into the portfolio, it has to fit with all the others that we have in portfolio already. So we like to see this close collaboration between the companies. So the company, for example, in Philippines, GET, that is running the public transportation, they are considered like Uber of e-bus business. QEV was the one to develop the bus for them. And at the end, another portfolio company's EV Dynamics is the one to do the mass market production in order to achieve the really low price for them. QEV is still doing also part of the maintenance and, you know, supporting and overlooking all of the vehicles, because all of the vehicles in Philippines are connected online, so we can follow on what is happening with the vehicles. We can warn even the operators, see if something is going to happen with the battery or the motor, even before, you know, maybe they notice there is something happening with the vehicle itself.
I mean, it sounds like you have a lot of capabilities, but I'm sure there's challenges that you're facing in the electric vehicle development going into the future. What do you see as the most 1-2 challenges that you're meeting at the moment, and where possibly a startup that could be added to the portfolio could help QEV?
Yeah, I think that one of the challenges that we have nowadays is really all the supply chain. You know, all the supply chain, or the majority of the suppliers are coming actually from Asia. And we need really to grow up this in Europe. I mean, we cannot depend on an industry that is far away, that is affected by the transport cost, and is growing. That I think that everyone knows that the transport really have grown up a lot the last 2 years, and also the valuation of the euro affect us a lot. So I really think that we need new startups, new suppliers, new components that have to be really produced in factories in Europe, and this is a key. This is a factor that all the governments have to help to improve. That we need really a public investment to grow up on this area, because if not, factories in Europe will not work in future. That's impossible. And obviously, I think a global world will not work just if you have the factories in China. We need really to have factories local in different continents. And this is, I think, that the most important challenge that all the automotive industry have to recover what we have done the last 20 years, that it's just to make production in China and selling in the rest of the world. I think that really this has to change, and is the challenge that we have now on the table.
Mm-hmm. Okay, understand that. You mentioned that you're looking at 4 different pillars, and go full circle in the adoption or mass adoption for electric vehicles to push that out. But I would assume that they're not equal. Is that correct? I mean, what would be the one that draws the angle a little bit more? What kind of startups do we need to accelerate the mass adoption of electric vehicles?
It's really hard to say, because you also need to look at it from a perspective of the market. So it's not the same for a market in Europe or America, and if you compare some markets, like emerging markets like we have in Philippines or we have in Latin America. So we are completely looking at different sides. In emerging markets, it's maybe more of a focus on public transportation, and this is what is going to make a significant change, because majority people use those public transportation, and that's like the only way of transport they have in their life. So in that way, I think the focus on those kind of markets should be on really improvements in that segment. And then for those markets, it's easier, like when it comes to charging infrastructure, it's much easier to handle, because when we are talking about buses, you know exactly the route of the bus, and you can really say, okay, we are installing fast charging points at certain areas where it's needed, and it's easy to solve it. But in Europe and America, I think that we are going to definitely face a challenge of infrastructure that we have. Because imagine, now all of a sudden, half of the vehicles are replaced with electric vehicles. And we are facing that all of a sudden you need the consumption of energy that is going to increase a lot. And also how do people handle. Not all of the people have houses with a garage, or garage where they can park the car and charge a car. So you could say that, okay, you are charging your car during the night, so it's easy. But what about those people that are living in the apartments and they don't have garages? How do they handle that? So I think that one of the biggest challenges for Europe and America is going to be the infrastructure and how to settle all of that to come to the mass market scale. But I think we can use the good examples like Norway. Norway is the first country where electric vehicles are becoming mainstream. So if they're capable of doing it, maybe just like copy their business model and follow the successful.
So would you also say that you have a certain focus, I mean, for a region where you want to invest in, or do you also distribute it across the world where you look at the future solution?
In that segment, we are actually quite open. Mm-hmm. For us, it's just really important, the technology, something that is new and revolutionary, and then on the other side, the team, as I said.
Okay. Joan, one last question. What advice can you give startups that are looking to found in the electric vehicle market or already are in the electric vehicle market?
Well, I will advise that really is the correct moment to do it. It's the correct moment to develop a startup on this sector, to try to make something different, to find a good technology. Now, actually, it's much more easy to jump the barriers that we have on the past regarding the combustion motors that was really like an ownership from the manufacturers. Now everything is open. You can develop really any part regarding really all the powertrain that electric vehicle needs. So I want to encourage more companies to invest in this sector, and for sure to ask from the governments to help, because we need their support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
Britta.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.